We're live. Banter.
Bantering. So Marissa said, Marissa's our CEO, our very talented CEO and kick-ass CEO, and she was like, "We'll just give you a PragerU card to get everybody coffee bean every Friday." And I was like, "Yes."
That sounds good. I wouldn't say no to that.
So you're originally from Canada, right?
Well, I've actually moved around a lot.
Okay.
It's kind of complicated. That's
Okay.
the roaming part of my name. But I
Yeah.
was born in Canada, but
Okay.
I grew up in Asia. So I've lived in Canada for about 4 or 5 years on and off.
Oh, that's cool. My
Yeah.
parents are in Edmonton right now, and I told my mom to text me when she spotted her first Tim Hortons.
They are ubiquitous in Canada.
Oh, yeah, I know that for
Yeah.
sure. Hey, everyone, this is Alicia Krause. I'm here live at the PragerU HQ, and today we have an interview with a fellow millennial lady, which I'm pretty excited about. We're joined by YouTube personality and just your average millennial philosopher king or queen, the Roaming Millennial. I'm sure many of you have subscribed to her YouTube channel and checked out her videos that I believe come out on Mondays and Thursdays, although there's been a lapse recently. So some people, like our very own communications director, Jared, are having withdrawals. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, and like you said, a little bit, you're roaming. I assumed that your name was Romy, because one, it's a cute girl's name, and two, it kind of would tie in with the roaming. But that is not your first name. Are you okay with sharing your real name with your fans?
I would rather not for now.
Oh, totally
It's been
understand.
kind of a nice little buffer. I'm
Yeah.
sort of an introvert, so like, I've been gradually easing myself into like internet life. Like first I was just my voice on slide screens and have kind of gradually come and shown my face, and then I feel like, first name will kind of be the next step, and yeah.
So am I allowed to ask you, despite you being an introvert, which is so funny to me because I feel like a lot of talented on-air personalities are very quiet and reserved off air. But am I allowed to ask you like the most inappropriate question ever to ask a woman?
Go for it.
How old are you?
So I'll be turning 23 in about a month and a half.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess I'm not quite at that point now where, I feel offended about people asking my age. So you're okay there.
Okay, good to know. My mom is like 62 though, and she brags about it. She thinks it's great to be able to brag about your age. And I say women need to be proud of their ages, but that can be another topic for another day. So share with us a little bit of your story. Like where did you come from? How did you get turned on to politics? Why do you do what you do?
Sure. Well, where I come from is sort of the story behind the roaming part of my name.
Hmm.
It's a little bit of a long story, but we moved around a lot when I was younger. I was born in Canada. Then when I was a couple months old, we moved to Hong Kong, and I kind of grew up in Asia. We lived in Hong Kong for 10 years. I lived in Shanghai for a bit, Singapore, also lived in London for a little bit. So I mean, I've kind of moved around all over, and I've been interested in politics for about as long as I can remember. I have an older brother who I think has been, a big influence of on my interests, like I think is the case for a lot of siblings. And so,
Hmm.
kind of, as whatever he was into, I would sort of latch onto it. And he was a weird kid himself who was reading like Aristotle and Plato when he was like 14.
Were
And
you
at
guys
that time I was
homeschooled?
like,
Because FYI, I was homeschooled, and that was normal reading for 13-year-old
yeah,
homeschoolers.
actually, yeah, because we moved around so much, we
Yeah.
did do like, large sections of our high school, especially when we were just homeschooled because it was easier than,
Yeah.
going back in and out of schools. Yeah, and so I think like a lot of people lately, especially maybe millennials who are more conservative, I felt like there wasn't really a lot of voices out there that were expressing my viewpoints or that I thought were, I don't know, kind of seeing things from my perspective.
Hmm.
So at first I started a YouTube channel just for fun because I enjoyed making home movies to show to my liberal friends. And then it's just kind of grown from there.
So when did you decide? I guess what's the timeline of you deciding, okay, I'm going to go from just having these opinions to sharing my opinions with the public?
That was, I guess, when I made my first video, it was actually a video that I was making for one of my friends that while I was making it or while I began writing it, I had no intention of posting it online. It was only after it was made that I was kind of like, well, I follow all these other channels and, well, I've just made this video. Maybe I can like kind of tweak it. And, so like, I, of course, like set up the channel and,
Hmm.
the whole roaming millennial thing. And I ended up posting it from there. And, like I said before, because I am an introvert, it was actually a really it was a big step for me to do that. It's not something that I think people who know me ever thought I would actually do, which is, part of why I was like so like holding on to my anonymity at first. And I mean, it was just kind of something that for like, okay, well, my name's not on it and no one's going to know it's me. So it's okay. I can just kind of like quietly test the waters, see what it's like to actually, voice a political opinion on the internet on this giant platform. And it's just, there was like maybe no one specific moment. It's just something that I kind of eased into gradually. And I think that's something that's really cool about, platforms like YouTube, is that it gives everybody a voice.
So when did you realize that a lot of people were watching and listening to you and your opinions?
I think that's probably, the first video I got that had over 100,000 views. I remember looking at that number and just thinking, oh my goodness, because at first, when I got 50 views on a video, I thought like, oh wow, that's really cool, and like that's like a whole like like a underclassmen like class lecture that's just listening to my videos.
And then like it's more than just my parents.
Yeah, exactly. And my grandmother.
Yeah.
And then from there, I would always kind of try to picture like the numbers in my head, like, oh, 100 people, or like, oh, 500 people, like that's everyone in my high school, or like, 2,000, that's like my whole entire town. But then like once it got to 100,000, I was like, wow, I don't even have a way to conceptualize this number anymore. And I think that's the first time I kind of felt like, whoa, like this is a pretty powerful tool that we have here, the ability to just broadcast your views and your opinions to people.
So your most popular video is Hands Off My Culture. Can you tell us about the video and what made you decide to do it?
Oh, that video has a lot of stories behind it. So something that's always bothered me about, the social justice narrative, there are so many things, but I think something that I've always thought was strange was the emphasis that they put on cultural appropriation. When it comes to things like women's rights or LGBT issues or, things like that, like I think we can all agree that those are important issues to talk about regardless of what sides of the issue we're on. But when it comes to these things like what food people are eating or like what their hairstyles are like, I've just never understood why there's so much interest or why there's so much hate coming from some people based on what people are wearing, their fashion choices. So that was a video that I felt really passionate about while I was making it. And so I published it, and it was one of the more controversial ones of my videos at the time that I released it, but it did end up getting very popular. And that's also that video, what two of the people who sort of inspired me to make that video, two prominent social justice activists that talk about cultural appropriation, were Lacey Green and Francesca Ramsey. So for that video, being a little bit cheeky, I guess, I took Lacey Green because I was, addressing her arguments, and I put her in a Native American headdress, which I admit, it was like a sort of tongue-in-cheek, naughty thing that I did. But anyway, she ended up reporting my thumbnail for copyright infringement, which started a whole bunch of internet drama and incidentally also made that video explode even more. Like at that time, it was my most popular video. And, because of everything that's happened, it's just, it's continued to be, I think, twice as many views, or maybe if not more than that, than even my next popular video.
Wow. So what happened with the infringement stuff? Did she back down, or did you win the case, or what happened there?
Yeah, so she did back down. For a while, I was really nervous because that was actually one of my first videos. At the time I published it, I think I only had about 20,000 subscribers, which, compared to Lacey Green's over 1 million is really nothing. So that was actually kind of a stressful time when it first happened, because I had, kind of been keeping to myself on YouTube and just minding my own business, like kind of casually putting out videos every 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden I have this giant YouTuber accusing me of copyright infringement. So that was a little bit scary, a nice kind of jump introduction into internet drama. But she ended up backing off. And I think a lot of people came out in support of me and the fact that fair use is just vital to our ability as creators to critique people.
Absolutely. And she's kind of a public figure, so that those laws exist for your protection as well. So you're kind of the underdog in that scenario. You've said in the past that you're not a fan of body positivity, so I'm just curious to hear you explain yourself.
Yeah, I mean that sounds really negative. Like when you like, yeah, so you're against body positivity. I first off, like I don't think anybody should be body shaming anyone. Like
Mhm.
I'm not a fan of people who are rude to other people, especially when it comes to their looks. Like I don't think that it's a nice thing to do. It's not a productive thing to do. I'm just not for it. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, we see a lot of that, especially online. But when I look at the body positivity movement in, its current form, I don't really see just people trying to say, hey, let's all be nice to each other the way we look, or hey, here are some like healthy lifestyle choices that we can all make so that we can all be healthy. Instead, what it's become is a way to, I don't know, like, I guess in a lot of ways glorify obesity
Mm.
or justify unhealthy lifestyles. It's come to the point where it's now un-PC to point out the fact that obesity does cause health problems.
Mhm.
They've become so focused on this idea of self-love and self-empowerment and self-acceptance that it's now preventing people from actually striving to be healthier and to make healthier choices. And so that's the part that I'm critical of. I also think parts of the movement are a little bit narcissistic, and I'm someone who thinks, like, at the end of the day it shouldn't matter what we look like. Looks are only skin deep, but I think the body positivity movement, it has a very different approach to things, and I think it
Mhm.
focuses too much on looks and not enough on actual, helping people through encouraging more healthy lifestyle measures.
Or emotional health too,
Right,
which is a
right,
big thing, I think, especially for women, because we're so self-critical. This is a
right.
topic that we've actually talked about a lot on a podcast that I do called Lady Brains over on Ricochet with my girlfriends, because there can be so much confusion, and we're like successful professional women, where it's like, wait a second, are we supposed to be overweight and not care about it, or are we supposed to look like Reese Witherspoon on the cover of Self,
Yeah.
with like
and
six-pack
and I
abs in a
think
bikini? And there's like
so.
this message that I think can be really confusing to young women.
Yeah, and I think so much of body positivity actually, it encourages young women to rely on validation from others in
Mm.
order to get their self-worth. Like it's very much like, oh, compliment people on what they look like. This is beautiful and this is also beautiful. You're beautiful no matter what. I think we should feel great about ourselves regardless of what we look like. I think, placing more emphasis on looks isn't going to help people feel better about their looks. I mean, like, we all have insecurities, but I think at the end of the day, that's something that we kind of need to deal with ourselves. We can't just expect other people to be throwing compliments at us all the time to make ourselves feel better.
So why aren't you a feminist?
That's I think basically, right now I don't consider myself a feminist because I'm an egalitarian, and right now the feminist movement has a very strong focus toward women, and they're no longer striving for equality, they're striving for special treatment and preferential advantages over the rest of society.
Hmm.
And a lot of people talk about feminism as if it's just this idea, this synonym for equality, which it's not. Feminism is a political movement. So, I mean, and this happens to me all the time, someone saying that, oh, well, you believe in equality for men and women, you must be a feminist, is like going up to someone and saying, hey, do you like slavery? No, you must be a Republican, right? I mean, like, you can believe in equality and women's rights without identifying as a feminist and attaching yourself to that movement, which I think at the moment is pretty toxic.
Hmm. So you post new videos twice a week. How do you come up with the topics? Is it just something that is in the news, or something that kind of gets under your skin that you feel like venting about, or how do you decide?
Well, thankfully, there's been no shortage of interesting events to cover
That's
so
for sure.
far. Yeah, I have patrons for like a Patreon account, so people who support my videos, and like part of like our community, that what we do is that my patrons actually help me vote on videos. They also help me decide what videos to make. So it's kind of cool because I have my own interests, but at the same time I like to be able to comment on more things. And what I've realized is that the videos that I find most interesting or that I'm most excited about are very rarely the ones that get the most views. And I think it just speaks to like different interests. Like I
Mhm.
remember I did this video on the minimum wage, and I thought, like, oh yeah, this is so great. Like, there's so many graphs. People are gonna love it. Which is incidentally not really happen. So it's good to, be able to have that community where I can get this feedback and kind of, keep an ear to the ground of what people are interested in. And, of course, 2017, it's been a very eventful year. I mean, the Women's March, the Muslim ban, there's been tons to talk about.
Absolutely. So you're really counterculture when it comes to other almost 23-year-old women out there.
Yeah.
Especially among millennials and feminists and American women right now. So how did you kind of chart this path, considering the rest of society seems to be pushing young women in a very #I'm-with-her direction?
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of it comes down to the way I was raised. If I look at the values that my parents taught me growing up, family values, individual responsibility, those were, not even political messages, but just those core values, I think, were really instilled in me. And I think those lend themselves much more to conservatism than they do liberalism. I also look at growing up in Asia versus growing up in North America. I think it's just a very different social climate, especially, when it comes to, I look at my friends who I have in the US and Canada, and I think it's come to the point now where being a woman has almost become a political identity, right? It's kind of like you're a woman, therefore a leftist, therefore liberal, right? Because of feminism, the two have been so closely intertwined. But growing up, I never had to deal with that until, I pretty much went to university, which I started in the States. And I mean, also, I think a lot of it is also due to the fact that I'm an INTJ. I'm really into
I would have never known.
Yeah, but because of my human resources research, my old job, I'm really into those personality tests, and it turns out that your personality does heavily influence your political views. And so, the kind of person I'm very focused on facts over feelings. I want to look at the data, stuff like that. And I think if you look at the more liberal arguments, a lot of them do come from more emotional places, which just, by virtue of my personality, those aren't really going to sway me. So if I had to, dissect myself and try to explain the why of Roaming Millennial, I'd say it's kind of those two influences, just personality type and my background.
Okay. So we're really excited that everybody's watched this. Be sure to share and like this with your friends. And thank you so much for watching and joining us. I'm going to ask you one more question, Roaming Millennial, as our feed is going to kind of cut off. Everyone watching will at least get part of Roaming's final answer to this question as our feed ends today. So I guess the question is, what is your master plan to take over YouTube?
Oh, that's a hard one. I guess my master plan is that, right now I started off only doing a video every 2 weeks, then it was every week. Now I'm doing twice a week. So I'm really excited to be putting out more content. There's so many different things that I'd like to address. And, with every video, there's more support and more subscribers. So it's been really cool to see my channel grow the way it has. And so I'm just I'm just looking forward to hopefully continuing that growth without any more